Pleasure of having Jill Coil with me. So Jill is a um, divorce attorney. She has one of the largest family law firms in the state of Utah, and I know you're also licensed in Texas.
hmm
I know you're also an author. You wrote a book called No One Dies from Divorce, and just an amazing businesswoman and also um, an entrepreneur, right? That I think everyone can learn from. But one of the main topics I wanted to obviously talk to you about was in your practice. And since you have so much knowledge and just experience in that, um, I wanted to thank you for coming on and sharing your knowledge with us all today.
Absolutely. Grateful to be here.
I wanted to ask you, I know a little bit about this story, but what got you into practicing law and then, specializing in divorce or family law?
Yeah, sure. I wanted to be a lawyer since I was little. Like when my friends wanted to go play Barbies, I wanted to play lawyer. And I don't know if I think I was more fascinated just with like the TV shows that I ended up watching but I always, was told by my parents that I love to argue and I love to be right. So it was just kind of a natural fit. So I really just, because I wanted to do it, I went on the trajectory of this is what I was going to do, and I never looked back. And when I was in, high school, I got to do amazing internships and everything that really solidified my interest in being a lawyer. And when I was in law school, I loved litigation. That's what I wanted to be, Perry Mason. And I wanted to be out there arguing. And I did mock trial and I was really good at it. So I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. But I thought I wanted to be a prosecutor who maybe
Mm,
then eventually would be a judge. Because I was working for the prosecutor's office and I absolutely loved it. But I came out of law school in 2007, passed the bar almost into 2008, which, if you remember, was when the economy was crashing. So government jobs were like on freeze. Like they just weren't
mm,
hiring right when I got out of law school and I needed a job. So I decided to take a job at a small boutique law firm, litigation firm, and they did everything family law. They did personal injury, criminal, and I took a lot of the family law cases. I realized quickly that I had the temperament and the personality that could really help these people through some of the toughest times. And so when I moved to Utah a year later and found my first job, it was with a family law firm. And that just kind of set my trajectory to where I am today.
awesome. Well, I think that's amazing because it looks like you had planned out your life ever since, but certain things changed, with the economy and everything that you mentioned. So just kind of adjusting to
Yeah.
the specific plan. But what are some of the misconceptions that people have with like just being a lawyer and, a litigator? I know that maybe there are certain things that people think that just aren't true.
I think a misconception is probably that lawyers make lots of money. It's a tough job. And for the most part, lawyers aren't going to be in the top tier of people that make money, but we seem like we do because there are some specialties that make a lot of money.
Mm,
So if you're doing it for the money, you just know that if you want to make a lot of money, you're either going to have a really bad work-life balance to be able to do that, or you're going to do something like personal injury.
mm,
Which, with the way that things are going in the trajectory of law, um, personal injury attorneys probably aren't going to make as much money as they've been making in the past. Um, so that's probably the first misnomer. The second thing is that it's really boring, or that it doesn't require a lot of creativity, and I absolutely think that that's complete opposite. My job changes day to day. There's never two cases that are exactly the same. I'm having to consistently think about new strategies. The law is consistently changing. So I feel like I'm never bored. I feel like that it's really a fascinating field if you love to really kind of create new ways of thinking. The other thing is like you could have the exact same facts, exact same arguments and get a different result in court. So there's always things that are just
Mm.
keeping you on your toes. Um, and and it makes it fun. Makes it hard and challenging, but it makes it so that I don't feel like I'm doing monotonous work every day.
Yeah, for sure. I think that there are some people that maybe can deal with the normal routine day to day, but I think a lot of people like variety in
Yeah.
their day to day. So that helps for sure. One of the things I wanted to ask you about with litigation, right, is like what are some negotiation tips that you have said you have learned through litigation that maybe can apply to different, different aspects of life, right, with sales and negotiation?
Yeah, that's a good, interesting question because communication is key in any aspect of your life. And I talk a lot about it with divorce because I'm a divorce attorney. That a lot of the reasons why marriages fail is because of the lack of communication. But a lot of people think, well, I can communicate in one area of my life, but I'm a bad communicator in another part. And this is my tip to everybody is communication is key in life, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's through your family, your relationships, your work, your subordinates, or you're a boss. Like you have to be able to communicate and you have to be able to adapt your communication to whatever the situation is. If you want to be successful in life, and the most successful people, I would do a lot of research and reading on the most successful people in life, one of the key things that they have in common is their ability to communicate,
Mm-hmm.
and not just be able to communicate what they need or what they want, but to do it in a way that the other person they're talking to hears them and understands it. So when you're talking about negotiation, whether it's in your divorce or the communication of how it's done and what is the driving force behind the communication is key. And what I mean by that is that in divorce, if you are communicating through a place of anger, it's never going to get you to the place that you need to be, um, and the way that you want it to be. And that's because obviously divorce already has high emotions. And if you're negotiating off of anger, you're always going to be disappointed. You're never going to be able to actually get down to the brass of what you need and your emotions. And that makes it hard. In
Hmm.
life, it's the same thing. If you're negotiating for anything, you have to understand the room. You have to understand the way that you need to communicate to be able to really clearly say, this is what I need, and this is why you should give me what I need. So it's a really good key in any aspects of life to learn communication skills. And there's a myriad of ways of being able to do that. You have
Yeah.
lots of resources to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think that the what you mentioned about anger is so key because I mean I'm sure you see it in your practice, but even in any kind of sales, I've always been told, right, don't let your emotions get in the way, right, of doing the deal or whatever it is. And so what would you say for people that maybe it's difficult for them to, how do I say, like displace their emotions from the situation, especially in something like the divorce, right? But I think it really applies to any aspect. How do you like at least lessen the emotions so you're talking from a strategic way instead of just, saying whatever you think?
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts to this. The first thing is that when you're going through a divorce, it's you have to go through a grief cycle. And you have to be able to eventually get to acceptance, which is tough when you feel like, you're going through one of the hardest things of your life. Um, but how do we do that? We get good friends. We, get into therapy. We get into a life coach or a divorce coach who could really help you understand your emotions, understand that, help you accept that it's okay to have these emotions, but then get you to a place where you can say, I'm not going to allow my emotions to dictate my decisions. And that's just getting in a better headspace, being able to say that I'm mentally doing better, I'm physically doing better. And it's not easy when you're going through the process, but if you recognize that divorce is in the end, that no one dies from divorce, and I say that with truity, that that the situation in itself will not be the thing that kills you. And it can be used as a platform to become the best version of yourself. So really kind of recognizing, okay, you're going through a hard thing. This is tough. Most people, probably the toughest things they've ever gone to go through. But being able to to really put it into, steps of what I can do to start moving forward will benefit you in the end to really be able to then get to a place where you're not making decisions off of emotion. The second thought, as a divorce attorney, a lot of people are like, let's go to mediation right away. Let's just get this done. I can't tell you how many of my mediations failed because we went too early. So
Mm.
when if you're in a high conflict case where there's, you're litigating the case, you're fighting over stuff. If you go to mediation too early, you're emotionally not going to be prepared to resolve the case. So don't go to mediation too early.
Hmm. How do you know when you've gone too early? It just doesn't get resolved, or?
Yeah, and you realize your clients fight, that there's a lot of distrust. They don't believe the bank accounts, or they're fighting over the
Mm,
teapot. They're fighting
mm,
over something that is not in the end going to really matter, and
right.
would, they're char- I'm charging more per hour than they could buy 5 of whatever this item is. That's when you start recognizing that they're not able to make legal, rational decisions because they're overly emotional.
Mm,
And those are the cases you don't really want to resolve, because they're going to come back in 2 days and be super mad at you because they're going to say that they weren't ready to settle, or they thought it was unfair. And so you want to make sure your client's prepared mentally to be able to be done with the divorce.
mm. Interesting. And are there like certain common age groups or certain phases of life where it has become more common, I guess, to get divorced? Just in, your experience.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely see trends of what are the so between year 1 and 7 is probably the most likely of divorce. You tend to see a smaller decline between year 7 to about year 15. Usually that's because the parties are very in the thicks of life, whether it's having children or building their careers, and they're able to kind of just put their head down and they tend to just plow forward. And then we're seeing a lot of divorces, when the kids start getting older and they recognize that, oh, wow, we have nothing in common. But there's a new age gap that 20 years ago, you would have never seen these 50-year-olds or 60-year-olds getting divorced. They've been married 30, 35 years, and you think, oh, but we are seeing a huge trend in, they're called gray divorces,
Hmm.
over 50 now.
What are the common reasons, I guess, in each phase, if there are any? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I would say year 1 to 7 is just young, getting through the honeymoon stage, realizing that you're not good for each other and getting out faster. Um, the older phase, or after year 15, the kids have gotten older, like I said. Usually they're in a better financial situation, but they're realizing that they're going to be empty nesters soon, or the kids are older and they just realize that they don't get along, that they've grown apart. Midlife crises are a big thing, you cheating, affairs, and then financial abuse is a pretty big thing in that phase. The older crowd is just, we're coming into an age where they realize that they've been miserable for years, and they're finally getting these faces of these people that have left these long-term marriages, and they're just getting the courage to do it. And so they look back and they're like, there's been abuse, there's been emotional abuse, there's been turmoil for years, and I'm just done. And now that they have a platform and faces and voices that are like, yeah, you can do this. You're going to be okay.
I see. It seems like any phase would really be very difficult, no matter what year you do it at. But you know, I would assume that at the last phase, right, the gray divorces, like you mentioned, that must be really affect, I guess, your self-worth because you've been with that person for the majority of your life, right?
Yeah.
Have you seen, because I know you talk about this a little bit, as far like your self-worth and empowering other people, what are some of the things that you would say to someone that maybe has gone through a divorce, so that their self-worth or their identity isn't in their marriage?
Right. Well, the first thing is your self-worth and who you are is not based off your marriage. A lot of people want to think that happiness comes from the other party. And if you're
Hmm.
looking for your spouse to make you happy, you're going to be looking for a really long time. Happiness comes within, and it's all based on you. The marriage then complements and elevates it. Your spouse should be your biggest cheerleader. And they should be your teammate. They shouldn't be competitors, and they shouldn't be the person that's dragging you down. So if you're absolutely married, like miserable, and you're in a marriage, you need to first of all really sit down and determine, is it me that's miserable or is it my marriage that's miserable? And then if you can't delineate, you can't tell the difference, then go out and start working on yourself and start doing the things that you need to do to really build your endorphins, help you feel better, get your self-worth back. What do you like, and start doing those things that really bring you joy. And then see if your marriage is elevated from that. If it's not, then you can reevaluate and say, well, I'm in a good headspace and I'm mentally doing well, but I'm still miserable. And you can then turn around and look at the marriage and say, this is just not for me. When you define your self-worth and who you are, you shouldn't the marriage shouldn't be the crux to get you there. You should be able to stand on your own, and if you're in a marriage where you feel like you're fully dependent on that marriage, then it's time to take another look. And that could be financially. We get a lot of times where they're like, I'm financially dependent on this marriage. And that's when you can look at yourself and say, okay, what do you need to do to become financially dependent? What do you need to do to feel confident in your own skin, in your own shoes, to be able to stand up in this marriage without the other side? And working on those things are just going to help you. If you decide to leave or if you decide not to leave, I promise you it's going to bring back a value to yourself that you have forgotten about or you haven't felt for a long time.
Yeah, I think almost some of these things can really just be applied even if you're not married, right? Like
Yeah,
before you even get married, right? It's like becoming a better you, really. And I think that when we are better for ourselves, it ultimately affects any relationship that we are, whether they're marriage or something else. Um,
absolutely.
yeah. So, tell us a little bit about your story. I know you mentioned, before I had heard you, you said that you actually were thinking about getting divorced, and this was you kind of, you learned, I guess, from firsthand experience what was going on, maybe what your clients would say. What did you take from that experience that maybe, but you didn't get divorced from what I remember. So, what some people that maybe are in the same boat, like, what are some of the life lessons, I guess, you learned from that experience?
Yeah, my husband and I had been married for 4 years. We had just had our second child. We were, my husband was in his first year of medical school, and we were just not in a good place. And he told me one day, he's like, I want a divorce. And he moved out, and that was
Mm.
it, kind of thing. And I remember just sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, I feel like such a failure. Like, I am the divorce attorney. I should know better. And it was really, really hard. And I remember when when we started talking about divorce and drafting up the divorce documents, I was like, I'm going to make him hurt. And I was wanting to use the kids I was like, I'm going to use the kids as a weapon against him. And I remember him getting the divorce documents and him writing and saying, do I need to find a lawyer?
Mm.
And I was like, no, you don't need to find a lawyer. But in my mind thinking, yeah, I'm going to screw you. Um, I've been able to, and then it was a few months and my husband and I decided to go to therapy and work out our differences. But I remember that that lesson has been able to carry through in me helping others that are going through this. That anger is the worst place to be making decisions that are going to affect you, your future, and your family. And it's so important for us to get past that anger stage and get more to a place of acceptance so that we can recognize that you can have crappy husbands or bad wives, but you can be good moms and you can be good dads. And we have to put those in the different boxes and being able to like recognize that and make decisions that are best for your children that aren't from a place of anger. Um, and I've also been able to understand and empathize with the hurt
Mm.
and the loss that you feel when you realize that your marriage is coming to an end, and the grief that you have to go through. So it's not easy, but you can take that. You can make two choices when you're going through this kind of tragedy. You can decide to just go this direction and never heal and never, play the victim and never use it as an opportunity for you to become this better version of yourself. Or you can take it as that platform to leap you to who you really should be. And if you choose that path, it makes it so that you're able to become um, a better human. I
Mm.
mean, you will become a better brother, a better sister, a better mom, a better co-worker, a better friend. And if we can, if 50% of all marriages end in divorce, then and we can take those people and say, hey, let's make this a movement of change to become better versions of ourselves. That's a lot of people that are going to, make changes in the world for the better. So
Do you think a lot of the people that do get divorced and just don't ever heal from it, and maybe just blame the other person, but never look within themselves and see like what their fault was in? Are these often the people that end up having two or three divorces kind of down their life just because they don't fix whatever their part is in those issues?
absolutely. I mean, 50% of all marriages end in a divorce. Second divorces are about 60%, and third divorces are 70%. And the pattern's going to be that you haven't fixed yourself. You still don't know who you are. You're codependent. You're still, needing somebody else to fill in this void. And it's hard because if you know what your love language is, if your love language is quality time or physical touch, well, the way you get that is through a partner, right?
Right.
So when you need that and you're yearning for that, then it's easier to get into these relationships because you're getting that fulfillment. But at the end of the day, if you go into it without really being able to support yourself, understand your self-worth, then you're just leading back into the same exact problems. I always say that the grass isn't greener on the other side, because on the other side, it looks a lot like your grass. So if you're not working on your grass to green it, strengthen it, water it, then you're just you're just going to walk right into a whole other mess of somebody else's grass. So you know, work on yourself first.
Right, right. Agreed, for sure. I think the grass is greener wherever you water it. So,
And it's going to be you taking care of your grass,
right,
you
right.
know?
Um, and another thing I wanted to ask you about has to do with like that work-life balance that you were mentioning, right? I know a lot of entrepreneurs, but or lawyers, doctors. I mean, you're working so much, and just have so many different obligations. How have you seen, marriages that are basically being affected, through all this different work-life balance struggles that they have?
Oh man, it's so different. Because, the marriage that looks perfectly on the outside could be crumbling from the inside. And then the marriages that you think are super strong, all of a sudden hear that they're getting divorced. And rich, poor, it, divorce doesn't scathe either of them. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's statistics that highly educated, wealthier families have a lower statistic of divorce. Um, But at the end of the day, it really is going to come down to just who are you? What do you need? Can you communicate what you need to your other spouse? And are they willing to give you what you need? I
Mm.
mean, if we kept marriage as simple as that, a lot more relationships would work out.
And do you think, I mean, in our culture where we're at right now, I feel like a lot of, people have just become very selfish and very self-centered, right? I mean, it might be Western culture, but I feel like that really impacts, your marriage, whether it leads to divorce or not, because you're always thinking about yourself and not the other person. When have you have you seen kind of this thread, I guess, occur, just in your practices in different marriages?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, as we see the millennials and the Gen Zs get older, and it 30 years ago, the average age for marriage was what, 22, and now it's like 27. Like, we clearly are seeing new problems erupt from this. The longer you wait to get married, then the harder it is, I think, because you are so used to being independent and on your own. So it comes with different challenges, but then yet we see a lot more dual income homes. We see more people being successful. It's not such a stigma if you're a couple that don't want kids. Like, there's a lot of benefits that are coming out of it, but there's going to be challenges, and it's not easy. Marriage is not easy. Doesn't matter what age you are. And so it's really, but being selfish in a marriage, is something that's needed and not needed. So what I mean by that is being selfish enough to realize that you need to be in charge of your own happiness. So you need to be taking care of yourself, and you need to be doing what's necessary for you. But then being not selfish in the fact that you have to look at your other partner, you have to see what their love languages are, what they need, and then be willing to
Right.
give it to them. For example, my husband and I's love languages are so different. And his is words of affirmation. And I struggle with that because I'm a doer. I'm I get crap done. And so, telling somebody, oh, thank you for doing something that it was already expected that they should do is hard for me. But throughout our marriage, I've recognized that if I want to, help my husband feel confident in our relationship, that I need to show up and be able to do that for him because it's important.
Right.
And in the opposite, he tries to just show up and do acts of service for me, which is my love language. So you have to look at it that way. Take care of yourself and making sure you understand your worth. You are mentally and physically strong, but then show up for your partner in the way that they need them.
Mm, I love that. And as far as words of affirmation, it's so funny that you said that. So my husband and I were like the opposite. So I'm words of affirmation. He is, acts of service. And so you always have to have that in your mind. It's like, okay, this person does not receive love the way I do. Okay, what do I need to do to show them love, right? Because, um, I I think if our cups aren't full, we can't really give, or if we give, we're just going to be empty ourselves. Like, we have to be filling each other's cup as it goes, as life goes along. But
That's
um
absolutely right. And It's hard.
Yeah.
It's like marriage, like maybe do your love language test before you get married so that you can really, because I didn't even know
Right.
how difficult it was going to be for me to have to. And I've been married now almost 18 years, I think.
Oh,
And
wow.
and it's still like a constant thing that I have to do every day to remember to let my husband know that I appreciate him. And
Mhm.
I'm all, it's like after 18 years, doesn't he know that? No,
No.
he needs to keep hearing
They
it.
still want to hear it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny, but it's true. Um, and I wanted to ask, as far as like running one of the largest family law firms, how has that impacted your self-worth and your marriage, right? Because juggling all these huge things, that's not easy. So how have you done it? What tips would you give?
Well, I mean, I've always been ambitious and I've always believed in myself, even when others didn't. And the road hasn't been easy. I've been knocked down a lot. I think me getting back up, I always had a mom that told me, like, when we get knocked down, what the most important part of that is being able to stand back up. And I've always kind of taken that kind of attitude. So, you know, my life hasn't necessarily been easy, but the knockdowns that I've had gotten me to the place where I can stand today and be strong and confident in who I am. Um, Being a boss fit my love languages perfectly. I like quality time and I like service, acts of service. So when you have 25 employees that are doing all this works for you, I consistently have my cup filled by my amazing staff and just the people that believe in what I'm doing and believe in me. Um, as to the marriage, it's been again a challenge because my husband used to say this early on. He's like, "Can you just take your lawyer hat or your boss hat off and be my wife?" And I've really had to grow into that because I I am identified by my success and so I come home and then just to be mom,
Right.
and some people like live their whole life to be mom,
Right.
but sometimes it's been really hard for me to go from this that I'm so proud of to just being a mom, and sometimes I feel like I'm a failure as a mom.
Mm.
I struggle at it. And so I work really hard at at remembering that I don't have to be perfect at being a mom, that my kids love me and all my mistakes, and they kids, they freaking tell you all the time about your mistakes, and there's
Yeah.
brutally honest. That's
Mhm.
what my husband says. He's like, you need it from the kids because you won't ever get it from your employees. And I laugh because I'm like, that's probably true. So it's definitely keeps me in a balance of being humble of my constant work of growth. And I say that all the time, that I'm consistently learning and I'm consistently growing, because by doing that, it will open the doors of opportunity. And I don't know if it gets easier, but it consistently,
You get better. You get
yeah.
better.
And it keeps my skin continually working to be stronger and be who I am today. So.
Hmm. So for people like you, like women like you, right, that are in business, are moms, our wives, like all the things, how difficult is it? I'm thinking for me, having to, you were saying it is difficult adjusting from like the lawyer hat or the boss hat into like the mom hat or the wife hat, right? So did you feel like you were giving up one to achieve the other, right? Because I feel like there's always this play where women, we feel like, okay, if I'm going to be this ambitious successful business owner, then it's like even harder for me to be a mom and a good wife and all these things. Like, what has been that play in your mind? Because I mean, obviously I think about this as well, so.
I always wanted to work. I had a mom that worked, and so it was always going to be how I was going to run my household. And I remember I dated boys that were like, "Well, you can't work. I want
Mm,
you to stay home with the kids. And so it was really important to me that when I found my partner, that it was going to be somebody that completely valued my drive and my what I wanted as to be successful. And Ryan has always been that. That is one of the things I can say honestly is that he has always cheered me on through all of my businesses, all of my ideas, and he's been my biggest cheerleader. So definitely if you're a woman like me and that's what you want, finding somebody that is completely secure in who they are. Like that's the
mhm,
other thing is it takes a strong, I think, self-secured guy to
mhm.
handle somebody like me. And so
Yeah,
Ryan always laughs because he always makes a joke about how he's like, yeah, and I'm just the doctor, like he's very successful in his career, and he is who he is, but he is so supportive of me and my strength and is so complimentary to that. And so definitely doing that. And then guess what? I didn't want to be a stay-at-home mom. I just
yeah,
didn't. And I got a lot of the mom guilt with that. I grew up in a very, very religious home and a very patriarchal, religion. And I remember I had to get over that because
yeah,
at the end of the day, it wasn't going to define me. And the God that I know loves me no matter what. So
right.
just knowing that there's not a perfect picture of this, like there's no perfect way that you have to do it. And guess what? It's okay. You don't want to be a stay-at-home mom? It's okay. My kids are great. My kids are thriving. I had four kids and I work as much as I
Wow.
work. I'm not saying it's perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you do what you need for you.
Mm, I love that. I think that finding the partner also is very helpful, because Hmm. Dealing a man I think that's insecure probably may wanna compete with a woman that's very strong and ambitious in that role. But having a partner, I think that is very confident in who they are. It's just like a support system where you don't feel like you're on the same team essentially. Having this family and growing the businesses, doing whatever it is you're doing, you feel like you have a team player, right? Not someone from the opposite side, right?
Yeah.
Not an enemy. So that's really good. I love that part.
One of my favorite therapists or marriage coaches, Abby Medcalf, talks about, and I've done a podcast with her, and she talks about this that number one problem with marriages is that they want to be competitors, they don't want to be
Mhm.
teammates. And I agree with that. Like when you're jealous or have a preconceived notion of how the other person's pathway is supposed to be in the marriage, like you're not on equal field, and there's gonna arise struggles with that.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have any tips for marriages that are either just starting or maybe their kids are getting grown? Other than like what you've already talked about with the self-worth, trying to make yourself happy and things like that, to instill a better marriage between the two where you are team players and you're not competitors, and just some of the things that maybe you've seen in your practice that people can improve on that would be practical.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that obviously we've already talked about communication is
Mhm.
key, and understanding your self-worth. Um, and then just, if there's jealousy, if there's one of the things we talk about in marriage that I see as the biggest commonality in divorce is separate finances.
Mm,
And so many people are like, separate finances saved our marriage, or that's what you should do. And listen, having a separate bank account and separate finances are two totally different things. If you say my money is my money, your money's your money, and you're not consistently talking about the goals of the marriage and where the money is going, you're basically saying that I can live at my standard, whatever that is, and how much I make, and you live at your standard. And we have no common goals of what our future is going to look like. You guys have to be sitting down, you have to be talking about, like, what does retirement look like? What do we want in our finances? How are we contributing to that? What does it look like when the kids graduate? If I've been a stay-at-home mom, am I going to be able to stay at home? Are we wanting me to go to work? What do we want to do to support me in doing that? And so many people think that, oh, you should just have separate finances. Well, no, you know what separate finances does is make a divorce harder.
Mm.
You have to, in a marriage, have common goals regarding your future finances, and so you should be working on that, definitely. Um excuse me. So yeah,
Have you
just a
seen
tip.
have you seen like in marriages like the saver and the spender, or a spender and a spender, like some commonalities that maybe affect having the same goals, I would say.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because they don't have common goals. And then you've got the one person that spends a lot of money and the other person that's a super cheapskate and doesn't want to spend any money. That causes problems.
Hmm.
And so you got to get on the same page.
Hmm. I
You
think it's
have to. A lot of people are like, well, let's just split finances and give them an allowance and then we'll just stop talking about it.
hmm,
That's not going to fix the problem.
hmm. It's almost having the same vision for your life.
Exactly.
I
A lot of
think
people are like, oh, I'm a stay-at-home mom. Why would I have life insurance? Why would I have a retirement? Why would I have anything like that? I'm like, are you planning on retiring too? Like, you're a stay-at-home mom. Like, is your life not valued at anything? Because I'm pretty sure you probably saved $100,000 in childcare. I mean, I
right,
probably have spent $500,000 on childcare for all my kids.
right.
And so does that mean nothing? And I absolutely can't stand it when they say, well, they're a stay-at-home mom, I'm the money maker. And I'm like,
Hmm.
are you retiring together? Like, her life is just as valued. I guess when she dies, in a horrific car accident, or she gets cancer, and all of a sudden you're having to foot the bill for a mom that's not there anymore, I guess that doesn't matter. So I'm always like, you got to get on the same page with this. And you have to value both parties the exact same way.
I think that divorce or had a lot to do with vision, because almost like division to me just means double vision, right? There's just two different visions. And so with what you're talking about, it's showing that there sometimes needs to be a divorce if there is no alignment in the vision that you have for your family and where you guys are going. Um, just based off what you were telling me right now. But have you ever seen someone that have different visions for their life or for their family say we're going to get divorced, and then they change the script? Like, is there something common that ends up happening where they end up staying divorced instead, I'm sorry, staying married instead of getting a divorce?
Oh, absolutely. We have quite a few a year that will retain
Mm,
our services, will start through the process, and then they decide to, work on themselves or work with each other, and they want to try to make it work. Because
mm,
I'm telling you, staying married is easier than getting divorced,
mm,
especially in some circumstances. And I won't say all, but almost all marriages could be saved. It's just a matter of the work on both parties. And sometimes you don't want to do the work. Sometimes you're just done. And sometimes there's abuse, and
mm.
abuse isn't okay.
Right.
And if that person's not willing to get help for it, then get out. So, but if both parties wanted to do the work, the marriage could be saved. But a lot of times you got one person that just isn't wanting to do the work. So get out. Don't be miserable in a loveless marriage, or somebody that doesn't want to work or has set crazy expectations for you. Just get out. It'll be
Mm.
better.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on the staying married is easier than getting a divorce? I've never heard that before.
Yeah, I mean, if you can work out your problems, I mean, you married each other for a reason,
Right.
you know? And so there was some kind of commonality and there's some kind of love that started there. If you could get back to the center of that, get stripped down away all of this animosity and whatever baggage you've built, you could get back to the place where you realize you respect and you love each other, but it's a lot of work. A
Mm.
lot of people are like, what's the one thing that you would like end your marriage on? And a lot of people are like, oh, if they cheated on me. In fact, cheating is never about you. It's about that other person. It's about insecurities that they're dealing with. I would say an affair is one of the easiest things to get past in a marriage to strengthen your marriage.
Mm.
And so, there's lots of work you could do if you wanted to, but it's not easy. You have to admit you're wrong. You can't live in your victimhood. You got to stand up. You got to strip away all of this armor or baggage. It's hard and some people are just exhausted and they don't want to do the work.
Mm. That's so interesting that you said that about an affair. That's probably one of the easiest things to fix because I would think that I think I read a statistic that said once there's been a divorce, it takes like 7 years to rebuild trust back into that partner. Um, are you saying that for a specific reason? I'm just curious because I mean, you hear of people obviously that have gone through an affair and then just almost like it's like a downfall from there.
Yeah, I mean, affair is usually about either two things. One, the person's insecurity with themselves. So they're seeking out uh, affirmation or they're seeking out something that makes them feel good. The
Mm,
second reason why people have affairs is sex. They're not getting what they need at home. They're they're they just want that. And those two things can be fixed within a marriage. Um, and and again, an affair is usually never about the other party. It's about them. So if they come back and they're saying, "Okay, I'm willing to fix myself," then it's not because they have something you're doing wrong. So the work can be where that person can work on themselves. Trust, you're right. You can lose trust, but you can gain it back as well.
right.
And, sometimes you have to hit rock bottom like that for somebody to recognize that they do want to change. They do want to earn that trust back. And as the receiving spouse to that, you can sometimes get more of a relationship because that person is committed to whatever they need to do.
Mm,
But
that's
again,
interesting.
it's not easy.
Nothing is easy, I would say. Nothing worth it, right? So,
Right.
and then the last question I had was, what's one question that you wished clients would ask you, but they typically never do?
Huh, that's interesting. I mean, I think that most of the time when they come and talk to me, they're past the point of return. Their divorce is happening, and I think the biggest mistake of divorce is not talking to an attorney. Whether you hire an attorney or not, talking to one to make sure you understand your rights of how your future, and your family are going to be protected are paramount. So if they're talking to me, I always say, this is great. This is the first step to you being able to figure out what you need to do to move forward and be protected. So and then I go through and I make sure that they have all the information they need to do that. So yeah, talk to an attorney always, even if it's just for a meeting, just to ask and know your rights. That's it.
Mm, mm, got it. Okay, well, I appreciate having you on the show. It was a pleasure. I think you gave a lot of valuable information. I learned a lot. I was also very surprised with all, really is like a positivity about marriage that that most people probably wouldn't think, right, from a divorce attorney, but a lot of positivity in it. And kind of like anything, right, in life, there just requires work. If you're willing to work on it, it can be fixed. So really appreciated having you, and thank you so much for coming on.
No problem. Thank you.